Hello legends. I hope everything is going well for everyone. We changed the channel name from Hassan to Hassan Motion a while ago. If this is your first visit, please consider subscribing to the channel. Like, share, and comment. Thank you so much, legends. Today's video is about the untold story of Mohamed Siad Bare. Who was he, what exactly did he do, and, more importantly, what went wrong? Who was Mohamed Siad Bare? Mohamed Siad Bare was a Somali politician and military leader who served as the president of Somalia from 1969 until 1991. He came to power in 1969 after leading a military coup that overthrew the government of Somalia. During his rule, Bare implemented a number of socialist policies and pursued a policy of scientific socialism. He also sought to build a strong, centralized government and improve the country's infrastructure. Bare's regime was marked by repression and human rights abuses, and he was eventually overthrown in 1991 during the Somali Civil War. What did President Mohamed Siad Bare accomplish? During his presidency, Mohamed Siad Bare implemented a number of policies and projects aimed at modernizing and developing Somalia. Some of the accomplishments of his regime include building infrastructure, education, health care, economic development, nationalism. In building infrastructure, Bare invested in infrastructure projects such as the construction of roads, bridges, airports, and seaports, which helped to improve transportation and connectivity within the country. In education, Bare made education a priority and expanded the number of schools and universities in the country. He also introduced a new education system that emphasized science and technology. Bare also improved access to health care in Somalia, particularly in rural areas. By building clinics and hospitals and training healthcare workers, in economic development, Bare implemented policies aimed at modernizing the economy and diversifying it away from agriculture. He also established state-owned enterprises, such as the Somali Airlines and the Somali National Bank, to help develop the country's economy. In nationalism and pan-Somali, Bare promoted a strong sense of Somali nationalism and sought to unify the Somali-speaking people of the Horn of Africa through his Greater Somalia policy. However, Bare's regime was also marked by repression and human rights abuses, which led to widespread discontent among the population. He was also not successful in unifying different Somali clans and regions. This led to the civil war and the collapse of the state.
sheegaya in maanta uu gaaray golaha kacaanka inuu idin sheego in gabadha iyo wiilka Soomaaliyeed isku xaq yihiin in dhaxalka ay isaga xaqiiqin.
So, what exactly went wrong? While Mohamed Siad Bare did implement some policies and projects aimed at modernizing and developing Somalia during his presidency, his regime was also marked by repression and human rights abuses, which led to widespread discontent among the population. Additionally, his policies and attempts to unify different Somali clans and regions were not successful, which contributed to the outbreak of the Civil War and the collapse of the state. Another factor that contributed to the breakdown of the state was the absence of a strong civil society and institutions in the country, which made it difficult for the government to function effectively. The country had long been plagued by clan-based divisions, poverty, and a lack of basic services, which created a fragile state that was unable to withstand the pressures of the Civil War. Furthermore, the fall of the Soviet Union had a major impact on Somalia, as it lost its main sponsor and support. Somalia's economy collapsed, leading to hyperinflation, food and fuel shortages, and widespread poverty. This further destabilized the country and contributed to the outbreak of civil war. Moreover, Barre's regime was heavily dependent on Soviet military aid. Once that support was withdrawn, the Somali army was no longer able to sustain its fight against the various rebel groups, which allowed them to gain control over more territories and eventually overthrow Barre's government. What happened on January 26, 1991? January 26, 1991, marked the day that the United Somali Congress, USC, rebel group captured the Somali capital of Mogadishu, effectively ending the 21-year rule of President Mohamed Siad Bare and his government. This marked the beginning of the fall of the Bare government and the collapse of the Somali state. The USC, led by General Mohamed Farah Aidid, was able to quickly gain control of the city with the help of clan militias and other rebel groups. Bare fled the capital and went into hiding. This event marked the start of the Somali Civil War and the collapse of the central government in Somalia, which then plunged into anarchy and chaos. This period was marked by clan-based warlords and militias vying for control of different regions of the country.
Sono i fondanti, sono chiacchiere che fanno in circolazione veramente di malafede. Io a questo punto non ho rubato o
Barre's last public appearance was on January 26, 1991, when he gave a speech on national television, in which he announced that he was stepping down as president, but it is not known who he spoke to after that. He left the country with his family on January 27, 1991, and went into exile in Kenya. He lived there for 4 years, then moved to Nigeria and lived there for the remainder of his life. He died in exile in 1995. In summary, while Barre's regime did achieve some successes in terms of infrastructure and education, it was also marked by repression and human rights abuses, lack of success in unifying different Somali clans and regions, and dependent on Soviet support. This ultimately led to the collapse of the state and the outbreak of the Civil War. Legends, if you liked the story, please share and subscribe for more videos. Thank you very much.